The old wooden porch creaked under my weight as I stepped outside, the humid Louisiana air clinging to me like a second skin. It was July, and even the nights offered little respite from the heat. I took a long drag from my cigarette, the ember glowing in the darkness, and stared out at the bayou, its dark waters reflecting the faint light of the moon. My name is Silas, and I'm 46 years old. I am a marine biologist, and this little corner of the world with its unique ecosystem and quiet charm had always been my sanctuary. Until now. My wife Clementine was inside, presumably asleep. We'd been married for 18 years, a lifetime or so I thought. We met in college, both studying biology, drawn together by a shared love of nature and a mutual respect for each other's intellect. Clementine was always the brighter of the two, more driven, more ambitious. While I was content studying the local flora and fauna, she had her sights set on bigger things: research grants, publications, recognition. I admired her ambition, supported her every step of the way, but lately something had been off. Clementine had been distant, preoccupied. She had been working late at the university more often, attending conferences in far-flung places, and when she was home, she was often lost in her own thoughts, her eyes glazed over, her responses to my questions vague and distracted. I chalked it up to the pressures of her job, the demanding nature of her research. I tried to be understanding, supportive, but the distance between us continued to grow, a chasm widening with each passing day. Then came the email. It was a Sunday morning and Clementine was in the shower. Her laptop was open on the kitchen table and a notification popped up on the screen. I hesitated, my conscience warring with my growing unease. I knew I shouldn't, but the suspicion had become a gnawing beast inside me, demanding to be fed. I told myself it was for the sake of our marriage, that I needed to know, one way or another. My fingers trembled as I clicked on the email. It was from a man named Jasper, a fellow researcher at the university. The subject line was innocuous enough, research proposal, but the content was anything but. The words swam before my eyes, a sickening cocktail of lust and deceit. Last night was incredible, it began. I can't stop thinking about you. Meeting you at the conference was the best thing that ever happened to me. My heart hammered in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I scrolled down, my stomach churning with each line. Details of their affair spilled out onto the screen: clandestine meetings, stolen moments, whispered promises. The email ended with a declaration of love, a vow to be together no matter the cost. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, the air knocked out of me. The world spun, the kitchen tilting on its axis. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking so violently I could barely manage it. I stumbled outside, gasping for air, the humid air doing little to ease the suffocating feeling in my chest. How could she? How could Clementine, the woman I loved, the woman I had built my life with, betray me like this? The questions echoed in my mind, a relentless chorus of pain and disbelief. Clementine came out a few minutes later, her hair damp, a towel draped around her shoulders. She smiled at me, a bright, cheerful smile that felt like a knife twisting in my heart. "Morning, honey," she said, her voice light and carefree. "What are you doing out here?" I stared at her, my eyes burning with a mixture of anger and hurt. "I read your email," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Her smile faltered, her eyes widening in alarm. "What email?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "The one from Jasper," I said, my voice rising. "The one where he professes his undying love for you." Her face paled, her hand flying to her mouth. "Silas, I can explain," she said, her voice trembling. "Explain," I scoffed. "Explain how you could betray me like this. Explain how you could lie to me for months. Explain how you could throw away everything we've built together for some cheap affair." She started to cry, tears streaming down her face. "It just happened," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake." "A mistake," I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "A mistake that you've been making for months. A mistake that involves secret meetings and passionate declarations of love." She sank to her knees, her body racked with sobs. "I'm so sorry, Silas," she cried. "Please forgive me." I looked at her, kneeling there on the porch, a broken, weeping mess. For a moment I felt a flicker of pity, a pang of the old love I had for her. But then I remembered the email, the words of betrayal, the months of lies, and the pity vanished, replaced by a cold, hard anger. "I don't think I can," I said, my voice cold and distant. "I don't think I can ever forgive you." I turned and walked away, leaving her there on the porch, her sobs echoing in the morning air. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. My life with Clementine was over. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and bitter recriminations. Clementine moved out, taking with her half of everything we owned, including the house by the bayou. I didn't fight her on it. I just wanted her gone, out of my life, out of my sight. I threw myself into my work, spending long hours in the lab studying the microscopic organisms that thrived in the bayou's murky waters. It was a distraction, a way to escape the pain and anger that consumed me. But even in the lab, surrounded by the familiar sights and smells of my work, I couldn't escape the memories of Clementine, the ghost of our past. One evening, I was working late, analyzing water samples under the microscope. I noticed something unusual, a strange anomaly in the data. I ran the samples again, double-checking my results, but the anomaly persisted. It was a chemical compound I didn't recognize, something that shouldn't be present in the bayou's ecosystem. Intrigued, I started to investigate, tracing the compound back to its source. I discovered that it was being released into the bayou by a nearby industrial plant, a plant that was owned by Jasper's family. The plant was illegally dumping toxic waste, polluting the bayou and endangering the local wildlife. A plan began to form in my mind, a plan for revenge. I knew that exposing Jasper's family's illegal activities would not only protect the bayou, but also ruin Jasper's career and reputation. It was a risky plan, but I was willing to do anything to make them pay for what they had done to me. I gathered evidence, documenting the illegal dumping, collecting water samples, and taking photographs. I contacted the Environmental Protection Agency, providing them with my findings. They launched an investigation, and within weeks, Jasper's family's plant was shut down, their illegal activities exposed to the world. Jasper's career was ruined, his reputation tarnished. He was ostracized by his colleagues, shunned by his friends. He had lost everything, just like I had. But unlike me, he had no one to blame but himself. Clementine, too, faced the consequences of her actions. Her affair with Jasper became public knowledge, damaging her reputation at the university. She lost several research grants, and her colleagues started to view her with suspicion and distrust. She had traded her integrity for a fleeting moment of passion, and she had paid the price. I watched it all unfold from a distance, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over me. They had both hurt me deeply, and they had both paid for their betrayal. But as the dust settled, I realized that revenge wasn't as satisfying as I had imagined. It didn't bring Clementine back. It didn't erase the pain. It didn't fill the emptiness inside me. I was still alone, still heartbroken, still struggling to make sense of what had happened. I realized that the only way to truly move on was to forgive, not for their sake, but for my own. Forgiving Clementine and Jasper wouldn't erase the past, but it would free me from its grip, allowing me to move forward, to rebuild my life, to find happiness again. It wasn't easy, but I started to work on it slowly, painfully. I focused on my work, on my love of the bayou, on the things that brought me joy. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and started to explore new hobbies. I started to heal. One day, a few years later, I was walking along the bayou, admiring the sunset, when I saw a familiar figure in the distance. It was Clementine. She looked older, more worn, but there was still a spark of the woman I had once loved in her eyes. We talked for a long time about everything that had happened, about the mistakes we had made, about the pain we had caused each other. She apologized for her betrayal, for the hurt she had inflicted on me. I told her that I had forgiven her, that I had moved on. We didn't rekindle our relationship, but we found a way to be friends, to respect each other, to acknowledge the shared history we had. It wasn't the life I had imagined, but it was a good life, a life filled with purpose, with love, with forgiveness. As I stood there on the porch looking out at the bayou, I realized that I had finally found peace. The pain of the past was still there, a scar on my heart, but it no longer defined me. I had survived betrayal, I had found revenge, and I had ultimately discovered the power of forgiveness. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The years passed and I continued my work, studying the bayou, protecting its fragile ecosystem. I never remarried, but I found companionship, friendship, and love in unexpected places. I learned to appreciate the simple things in life, the beauty of nature, the warmth of human connection. And sometimes, when I was alone on the porch, watching the sunset over the bayou, I would think of Clementine, and I would smile, knowing that we had both found our way, that we had both survived, that we had both learned to forgive. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.